we've had some differences, obviously, in our approach, and we think there is an opportunity to have a more ambitious plan for what Port Talbot could be in the future, and that's why we put forward our own proposals around the future of the plant. We think there's still an opportunity to get a more ambitious solution delivered for the plant, and so our General Secretary has been very clear that we're willing to put in the resources and the time to fight for a better solution and to get Tata to move and to reconsider what it's doing, and to get political actors to move and reconsider the amount of funding, as Alistair indicated. The amount of money on the table for Port Talbot, a really important strategic asset for the UK, is completely inadequate to what's needed to decarbonise. And this is an opportunity to rethink what we're doing at the moment. Well, our proposals aren't to double capacity at Port Talbot itself. Yeah. Certainly, at a national level, we think there's an opportunity to double the capacity of the steel industry as a whole. I think our steel industry is a minnow compared to other European countries. We produce far less steel per capita than France, Germany, Italy, countries like that. So we think on a national level, that's our proposal. We're not proposing at Port Talbot to double capacity, but we do think there's an opportunity to expand capacity to some extent, and certainly to increase production from its current level. Yeah, I mean, I think the key point here is that we need this steel, right? The question is not do we need the steel, it's where is it going to get made? And the risk here is that we're simply, I mean, as Charlotte said, that we're offshoring emissions, we're offshoring production, we're offshoring jobs, and that becomes the new status quo after a few years, especially if there are problems or delays down the line. There are potentially other Tata plants around the world that are going to be producing the steel and bringing it here. That might be a decision that Tata decides is what it wants to move to moving forward. So I think this is a really dangerous step, and one that we should have big questions about. I mean, I think we're in a transition moment in the way we make steel. Clearly, there needs to be a change to the way we produce steel in terms of the sort of climate impact and the sort of carbon impact of steel making. We think that the electric arc technology can be part of the solution, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. But it needs to be part of a solution that includes the capacity to retain virgin steel production, which is what's missing from the scenario that Tata is laying out, as others have touched on. We can't rely on a purely scrap-based model to produce the range of products that we need. That's a sort of basic economic security point. It's a national security issue. There's sort of specialist applications for steel that we're in danger of not being able to produce in this country if we go down a purely scrap-based route. So the most important thing in the immediate term is to keep Blast Furnace 4 open. So additional investment will be needed to do that, but it's not a significant amount more to do that. And we think Tata does have the resources at a global level, certainly. It's a very, very profitable conglomerate. Admittedly, at the UK level, they've had issues, but at the global level, this is an extremely profitable company. But we also need to think about the role that government is playing in this. As we've touched on already, the amount of money that government is putting in is not adequate. It's not comparable to what other countries are doing. This is a far too important strategic asset for us to allow it to be lost simply because inadequate funding was put in place. And that funding needs to come with, it's not adequate, it's not acceptable to have that funding come without strings attached either. I mean, at the moment, that money doesn't come with guarantees, solid guarantees on jobs, for example. That needs to be there. We think there's a role for the government to take a stake in the plant as well. Potentially that should be being considered as well. Again, the need to retain virgin steel production in the UK is too important to be left to the decisions of one multinational company. We think a stake should be taken in the industry, yes, by government, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
We think we can. There's a way forward which can avoid job losses, yes. Yeah, so we think that there is an opportunity to be more ambitious here than Tata is being, and we think that at the moment, as was touched on earlier, I think there is a bottleneck in the plant in terms of what the hot mill can deliver, and that's constrained capacity and the level of production that can be achieved. And that was a decision by Tata to run down that capacity. I mean, where I would disagree with what others have said is I don't think Tata has been as good an owner as they could have been. I think they have underinvested in the plant. They've allowed plant and equipment to deteriorate over time. We think underinvestment in the plant is part of the reason why Tata has experienced financial difficulties. They've had repeated production problems because of that legacy of underinvestment. So we think it's possible to think more ambitiously, to remove those bottlenecks and expand the level of production. We think there should be a DRI facility on the site. We should retain that capacity to make those metallics that, as Alistair said, are vital for producing the full range of steel products. Yes, that would involve more spending. We're not shying away from the fact that this does require a much greater level of investment. It would bring us back to a level of investment that is much closer in line to what other European countries are doing, as Alistair touched on, what Germany and other major industrial countries are doing. So we think we should be thinking bigger and bolder about that, and we don't shy away from putting forward a different type of solution that isn't just kind of rubber stamping decades of underinvestment. In total, we think we're looking somewhere over 3 billion to completely decarbonize and to expand production on the site. But in the short term, the difference between, in the sort of first stage of what we've put forward, it's only a couple of $100 million more than is on the table for that first stage of the plan. And Tata's already talking about putting aside significant amounts for redundancy payments and things like that should be being put into productive investment instead. We're the only sort of major country in Europe that doesn't provide significant energy cost support to its industrial base. That needs to change. We need to see a more comprehensive solution on energy costs. There's been some move from government on that, but it's not nearly adequate enough to meet the challenges of energy prices for big industrial producers. And obviously, if we move to a world where we're producing steel in a more electricity-intensive way, that's only going to become more of a challenge. So we need to see a comprehensive solution on energy costs.